I think that we've suspected for a long time that any sort of accounting that's going on in the military is probably suspect. We see such large sums of money. We hear about huge sums of money going missing in Iraq and all of that. Money just getting thrown around. It turns out it's actually worse than we thought. The Defense Department's Inspector General in a June report said the Army made $2.8 trillion in wrongful adjustments to accounting entries in 1 quarter alone in 2015 and $6.5 trillion for the year. Yet the Army lacked receipts and invoices to support those numbers, or they simply made them up. And so that's a huge amount of money, obviously far larger than even the military's budget for 1 year, for several years, for multiple years. And this doesn't mean that 2.8 trillion simply disappeared in 1 quarter, but it does mean that different registers of numbers of supplies or vehicles or ammunition didn't match up, and so they simply changed one of the numbers, or they don't know how much money was budgeted to one area, or the files, as you're going to see, were simply lost. And the reason the numbers get so big is that that has a ripple effect, that when there's a mistake at one level of the chain of the accounting that happens at various parts of in the military, that you then have a ripple effect down below that. And the problems never actually get solved, they simply get covered up. And it's become almost institutionalized throughout the Army and the rest of the military to do that. Now, this report that I referenced concluded that forced adjustments rendered the statements useless because DoD and the Army managers could not rely on the data in their accounting systems when making management and resource decisions. Decisions that, of course, still need to be made. We simply don't have any fiscal information to base those decisions on, or certainly not information that we can actually trust. And for years, the Inspector General has inserted a disclaimer on all military annual reports. The accounting is so unreliable that the basic financial statements may have undetected misstatements that are both material and pervasive. So that's the level of the Inspector General, but it goes all the way down to the bottom. Some employees of the Defense Finance and Accounting Services, which handles a wide range of Defense Department accounting services, referred sardonically to preparation of the Army's year-end statements as the grand plug. Plug is accounting jargon for inserting made-up numbers.
If you say so.
That's exactly what it is, I guess. And in addition, this number, as big as those trillions of dollars is, this number scares me even more. DFAS also could not make accurate year-end Army financial statements because more than 16,000 financial data files had vanished from its computer system. Faulty computer programming and employees' inability to detect the flaw were at fault. Or perhaps, in some cases, their need to cover up the fact that those numbers were all just invented out of whole cloth.
And they blame Hillary Clinton for missing emails.
Yeah.
Now that's a lot of missing emails.
I'm going to say something crazy. They're both wrong.
Yes, that's exactly right. Okay, so to me, the number that I'm most both amused and disheartened by is the spokesman for the military downplayed the significance of the improper changes, saying that when you net out all the different things that John was talking about, all the different journal entries, it's not the trillions of dollars, that the real problem was only $62.4 billion. And they did not say it with a wink. They weren't sarcastic. They really believe, oh, that's only a $62 billion problem. So the waste in the United States military is unbelievable. And by the way,
it could fund many countries' militaries, just the waste.
Could fund many countries. I mean, look, the budget, the entire budget for America is like 3.9 trillion, right? So when we're talking about 62 billion or $6 trillion like unaccounted for, you're talking about the equivalent of the United States budget plus some. You know what I mean? That's what we need to be putting in perspective. But the good news about this story is that this is actually progress. The Pentagon, since like forever, was unaudited. They didn't even get an audit. Every government program, every government agency gets audited. And until this guy, Chuck Spinney, who's quoted in this article, came out in the 1980s with like the Military Reform Caucus and said, hey, we need to audit the Pentagon. It took them like 30 some years to actually get an audit. So at least it's the first step. And we're getting some accountability from the Pentagon about where we're spending our money.
Conservatives, you don't like big government? This is big government. So, like the one place which is the biggest government program we have, the United States military, you're saying, generally speaking, a lot of right-wingers are like, oh, no. We need the military budget. We need it to be larger. Don't even look into it. Well, we don't want to waste taxpayer money. Of course you should look into it. And that is irrespective of whether you think the military budget should be large or small. It doesn't have anything to do with that. I just don't want them losing $62 billion.
Yeah.
You shouldn't want that. That's your taxpayer money. Where the hell is that going? And by the way, I have an answer for you. part of it is going, a lot of it is going to defense contractors, and they're getting super rich off of it. That's why they don't want you to look into it. That's why they don't want you to do accounting. Oh, look at those billions of dollars that slip through the cracks and into the crony capitalists that are the defense contractors.
The richest zip code in America isn't 90210, like right out here in California. It's actually the Virginia suburb of Washington, D.C., where most of the military contractors live. Isn't that crazy? That's the #1 richest zip code in the entire country where the military contractors live. Now we know why.
Yeah.
Well, I just get so sad when I think about the $62 billion. Can you imagine how much we could fuck up Syria with those $62 billion? There could be no more Syria. No Syria at all. We could bomb it to nothingness.
And it's crazy, and some people want to take that money and waste it like on education.
That's almost exactly how much Bernie Sanders' plan would cost to send all kids to 4 years of tuition-free college.
People also forget what happened on, people remember what happened on 9/11/2001. People don't remember what happened on 9/10/2001. Do you remember what happened on 9/10/2001?
What happened, Jimmy?
Sounds familiar.
That's when Donald Rumsfeld held a press conference and admitted that the Pentagon could not account for $2.3 trillion.
Yeah.
$2.3 trillion. You know where it went? It was just gone, right? But I bet there's some poor people watching a flat screen. We better go kick their ass.
Yeah.
$2.3 trillion. That could fund college for everybody forever. That could fund healthcare for everybody. But $2.3 trillion just disappeared the day before 9/11. Isn't that interesting?
So I don't know if that's interesting or not about the timing. I do know that the number is maddening. And if you're a conservative, you're a liberal, you're independent, it doesn't matter. That's your money. And everybody has to be held accountable, not just the people on welfare. I mean, they're directing you, all of your ire at the most powerless people in the country while they walk away with billions and in some cases trillions of dollars and tell you, no, don't look here, don't look here.
Yeah.
Don't look at all the money that we're taking in the largest government program there is, and with almost no accountability. And by the way, I just got rid of 16,000 files you'll never see. God knows what was in them. Maybe it was an accident because it's a giant bureaucracy with a lot of screw-ups, or maybe it wasn't an accident. While you're over there worried about Hillary Clinton or a made-up scandal like the IRS scandal so that they can make sure that their rich friends don't get audited, right? Meanwhile, they're doing the greatest American robbery we've ever seen, and you're worried about the powerless people in the country. We spent a couple of million wrong on welfare. There's a couple of trillion in the other direction. Pay attention. And by the way, it's okay to pay attention to both. But if you're going to prioritize, this is the much bigger deal.
I also, the other thing this gives me hope about is knowing how long ago they started that fight, right? And how it's manifested now. You can see Chuck Spinney, the guy that's Franklin Spinney in this article, on the front of Time magazine in the 1980s, sitting in a congressional hearing, say, we got to audit the Pentagon. We got to audit the Army and the Armed Forces. And now, 30-some years later, it's actually coming to fruition. It's actually happening. And for me, it's hopeful as somebody who works in politics, right? That sometimes these fights are hard and long, but they're really meaningful. $2 trillion is half the federal budget. What can we do with all that money? And it starts with somebody speaking out and speaking up and doing something about it. And that's why I think people like Chuck Spinney and Boyd, who is his kind of mentor, if you're in Wolfpack, you might have heard me talk about Colonel John Boyd. Those people actually planted the seeds that are now growing into this tree that we're going to live under because we're going to fix this problem, right? Now that it can't survive when it's in the sunlight, it can only live in the darkness. And right now we're just seeing that kind of transition point. So I'm hopeful.
Well, that's why, when I talk about Wolfpack and we all work on it, that's what we're talking about. It's bipartisan, man. The corruption is bipartisan, the solution is bipartisan, and so whether you consider it big government, crony capitalism, or you consider, the terrible Pentagon, it doesn't matter what your perspective is. It's all of our money, and we need to hold them to account because they work for us to make sure that we get that money back and we do government the way we're supposed to.